You're listening to the Big House Bleachers Podcast.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Big House Bleachers Podcast. I'm Michael Smeltzer. I'm here with Matt Hartwell. Matt, how you feeling?
I'm feeling fantastic, Mike. I mean, 7-0, whooped the shit out of Penn State. Doesn't get much better than what we saw yesterday.
It really doesn't. You know, this is what it's all about when you're a fan. This is what you want to see. You go into a top 10 matchup. Everybody's hating. Everybody's doubting. You know, there's people out there saying, you know, Michigan's going to get exposed. You know, you know, not to put anybody on blast, but there's some, you know, larger Twitter accounts out there that have been saying Michigan's going to get exposed. And then, you know, we went into this game and you know, we'll get into the game flow a little bit. I think the first half and the second half had very different identities, as has been the case with a lot of Michigan games this year. But the thing that didn't change from half to half is Michigan absolutely controlled the line of scrimmage, and they absolutely controlled the first downs and the yardage from beginning to end. The way the score looked and the way that reflected on the scoreboard was a little different half to half, but we dominated the whole game.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely kudos to the run game and the offensive line. I mean, really, when you break it down to the nitty gritty, though it's a great team win, I feel like the 60% of this win goes to obviously that offensive line and Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards putting together a massive game on the ground.
Well, speaking of Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, you know, you can't help but notice and feel Mike Hart back on the sideline. After that scary moment last week, he had a seizure. None of us really know what was going on. I had a feeling he might be on the sideline because I saw him Friday at a high school game recruiting, and so I thought that was a good sign. He was out doing some football activities. But, I mean, what an amazing energy the running backs had. And so, you know, I actually want to start our positional breakdown with the running backs, not the quarterback, you know, how we normally do it. And so let's talk a little bit about the RBs, bro. What'd you think?
A well-deserving kickoff to the show to talk about the running backs. I mean, Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, obviously amazing as usual, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Donovan Edwards, in his return from injury, also reeling in a couple touchdowns, as well as 173 yards of his own. I mean, I thought it was amazing, an amazing comeback for Mike Hart to see him on the sidelines. I feel like that kind of pioneered that excellent game for the two of them, and just amazing to see, just watch all of it unfold.
Yeah, man, it's wild. You know, you look at the box score after the game, and Donovan Edwards actually had more yards than Corum. And I'm sitting here thinking, Corum is putting together one of the most epic, running back masterpieces of any Michigan running back ever in a top 10 matchup. And then all of a sudden you look at the box score after Donovan breaks a few big runs, and it's holy shit, dude. Our number 2 guy, technically had more rushing yards. And so, you know, Penn State was the number 5 overall rushing defense in the country coming into this game. And I think there's a quote of Urban Meyer saying before the game, well, we know Michigan ain't going to run the ball on these guys. You know, take that, Urban, right? Like that, what is that, 416, 418, something like that yards. An absolute masterclass in rushing. I don't know what else you can say. Except Corum for Heisman. We're going to, you know, fans of the Big House Bleachers podcast know they're going to hear at least one Corum for Heisman every single episode. So let me just get that out of the way.
Absolutely. It's all about Blake Corum for Heisman. Make no mistake, Donovan Edwards had an amazing game. He is the X factor of this offense. Really, I think Donovan Edwards is one of the most exciting components to this offense as it stands. But Blake Corum is an absolute 100% through and through Heisman candidate. You can't tell me otherwise. I don't want to hear anything about USC's quarterback or anything like that. Like, that's not what the Heisman is about. So people need to start including Blake Corum in this conversation. The guy is as consistent as it gets.
Oh, man, without a doubt. And, if I was going to pick my top 3 Heisman candidates right now, Hendon Hooker at Tennessee, because that dude is just wild. And we'll talk about what happened with him a little bit later. I'll give CJ Stroud some credit. As much as it pains me to say it, whatever. We'll let him, be up there. I think he's earned the right to be considered thus far in the season. But then Corum, right? I think those are the 3 guys that really lead the Heisman conversation right now. So Corum for Heisman. Let's move on to the quarterback. Only one got – actually, no. I think JJ did get relieved at one point in this game, but the majority of the snaps went to JJ. JJ started and finished the game for all practical purposes. You look at his stat line, 17 for 24, 145 yards and an interception. If I looked at that without watching the game, I would say, he did not have a good game. But what did you think?
Honestly, aside from the interception, I thought JJ had as good of a game as he possibly could have had, given the performance of the running game yesterday. And it's almost, and like I said it last week on the pod, but it's almost Cade McNamara-like, and it's really not having to do anything with JJ or Cade. It's just the way that this Michigan team and this offense is structured. We run the shit out of the ball. We're very good at running the shit out of the ball. We're going to probably score 4 or 5 touchdowns on the ground almost every game. Obviously it's great to have that explosive component to the offense that JJ brings. You see it in the run game. I think JJ went for 50 yards or something like that of his own on the ground. So that's something that Cade McNamara can't do. So make no mistake, I'm not saying that we would be better or worse with JJ or Cade, but JJ definitely brings a lot more explosive components to this offense that we get to see sprinkled throughout the game. Maybe not always because of the run game, but a good amount.
Yeah, and the haters are going to say, they're going to look at a stat line like this and they're going to say, I told you he wasn't one of the best, players in the country or best quarterbacks in the country. And, I think us Michigan fans actually know what's going on because we watch the game and we understand exactly what's happening. This is a Jim Harbaugh, run the damn ball kind of team. And JJ gives us exactly what we need throughout the game. He got a little lazy and tried to force that little, tipped pass that went for the pick 6. We all kind of knew that JJ was going to try to make some plays and that not all of them were going to pan out. But the positives far outweigh the negatives with JJ. And, he's accurate. Even in a game like this with a stat line like this, he was hitting Ronnie, Cornelius, and Roman on time. He looked good. And then there was that extra element, right? He got us some first downs with his legs and kept some drives alive. That's our QB1 killing it. And I do think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and he's going to be a difference maker when we go into Columbus at the end of the year. Let's roll on.
I will say this, Mike, that he does need to take care of the football a little bit better. And that's really not even a knock against his interception or anything like that. It's more just kind of I know you saw the one play where he was sensing the sack, coming right his way, and he just threw that shit up in the air. And I think it floated down, luckily, into the hands of Blake Corum. But, it was kind of a stroke of luck that he was able to force that play. Jim Harbaugh, you saw on the sidelines, just shook his head and didn't even laugh or joke or anything, but you could tell. Obviously he was just kind of what the fuck about it going his way.
Yeah.
He just
I went
needs to
through
be
the
careful
whole-
about what he's forcing and things like that.
Right, I went through the whole range of emotions during that play because I'm like, no, 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 and then, and then Blake caught the ball, but of course he's doing this like little shimmy on the sideline. I'm like, yes, 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 it was. But I'm with you, and coming into the season, I had this theory that starting JJ McCarthy would give us 14 extra points a game, but would probably give the other team 7 extra points a game just based on ball security issues. And if we're going to win a national championship, if we're going to beat teams like Georgia and beat Ohio State again and win in the playoffs, we're going to have to cut out those errors, right? We can probably beat a Penn State or an Illinois who looks like they might be strong. We can probably beat those teams with a turnover or two. But the big dogs, that's not going to cut it. Let's take a look at the pass catchers. Let's look at the wide receivers and tight ends for this game. Because JJ didn't rack up a lot of passing yards, there's not a lot of really remarkable things to say, but our 3 main guys looked good. Our 3 main receivers, Roman, Ronnie, Cornelius, they looked good. Anything that you wanted to add about the receivers?
Really no. And the receiving group, they just kind of have games like that, where our running game kind of takes off and they just kind of like fade into the background. They, like you said, our top guys were pretty consistent. Loved seeing Roman Wilson get back in the mix from injury. Awesome. What I really loved to see, which was also kind of a question mark simultaneously, was Colston Loveland and Max Bredesen getting in the mix at the same time too. I was even like tweeted something about it, like, where is Luke Schoonmaker at? Because both of them were in the game at the same time, and I thought that was kind of odd. But I mean, Loveland obviously coming down with that awesome play that got turned back, but it was cool to see a little bit of the future sprinkled in there. But I did happen to see Schoonmaker later in the game, and he caught a pass, so seemed to be fine. But just what was wondering, because we didn't even have that big of a lead at that time either, and to have those tight ends in the game, I just wasn't sure what was the strategy was with that.
I wonder if James Franklin and Manny Diaz were selling out to stop Schoonmaker just based on the tape from the last couple weeks. I couldn't really see downfield. It's tough to see coverages downfield, but I wonder if they just made a concerted effort to shut down Schoonmaker, and so we were just like, all right, we'll get our other tight ends in the game to throw you off, send them a couple passes, and then just. I mean, really, we didn't have to throw it much, right? So, when you're getting, 7 to 12 runs up the gut behind Olu, you don't really have to air it out. And speaking of Olu, let's move on to the O-line. I'll hand this one off to you because this might be the most exciting positional breakdown, man. What'd you think of the O-line?
I mean, I love our O-line. And there's so much talk, of course, this year about is this the best O-line that Michigan's had and so. I don't know. I'm not sure how that comparison works with O-lines exactly. But this offensive line for Michigan is as good as I've ever seen it. Oluwatimi is a beast. He's I kind of think he's kind of like Cesar Ruiz, only a little bit better, even if I'm dare I say. I think that this guy might be a late first round draft pick, second round, but he's doing everything right. He's a Wolverine through and through. Obviously, hats off to the other guys. Trevor Keegan, way to step up for him. And it's just been awesome to watch it unfold.
Yeah, and again, like you said, I don't know if it's the best O-line Michigan's ever had. I mean, Michigan's the kind of school those are really big words, right? We've had the Steve Hutchinsons of the world and the Jake Longs. We've had some really good O-lines, but I'm convinced that we're once again the best O-line in the country, right? We've got the best O-line in the country again, without a doubt. And the thing that's interesting is we're doing it in a day and age where college football is played a little bit differently. There's a lot of pass protection. There's a lot of spread the ball out and get it to your playmakers. There's not a lot of teams that are successfully at a high level just jamming it down your throat, right? Like that was the playbook in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You don't really see that a lot now. And Michigan does it perfectly behind, what I believe is the best O-line in the country.
Yeah, and again, just to say, it's extremely impressive how they've developed at that position, and you wonder with the depth with Trente Jones falling out last week, you wondered about it, and still against what was considered to be one of the best units in the country at stopping the run, they kind of just imposed their will on them, and it was excellent to see.
Yeah, Barnhart has been stepping up for Trente and didn't miss a beat. I couldn't identify any areas where he missed an assignment or anything like that. And then we go to the other side of the ball. We go to the D-line, and Penn State brought in, this guy, Nick Singleton, who was the number one running back recruit in the country last year. He's really had a few really impressive games. And then they got another back. I forget the guy's name. They got another back that's excellent as well. And I had some Penn State followers telling me before the game that we had to watch out for both of them, that they were going to kill us. Well, neither running back got more than 19 rushing yards. 19, right? Like the all of their rushing yards came from one play when Sean Clifford took it up the gut and gave us all a headache in the first half, but their running backs were non-existent. So, I got to think Mozzie and Chris Jenkins are the names that stick out first, but that whole D-line, what'd you think of them?
Man, first and foremost, what a game for Mozzie Smith. And every time I see Mozzie Smith break loose of a block, you know what I mean? And he's about to sack the quarterback and he just misses, I die a little bit inside, I feel like. But he had a great game, was super effective. He was everywhere. Jenkins also very solid. Looked to me like I don't know what the snap counts were, but it looked like Yabi Oki was kind of a little bit absent from this game, minus a couple of one or two snaps that he was pretty effective. But Chris Jenkins was very effective. Saw his name called out a lot. And, they didn't get a lot of sacks. I think Mike Barrett split one with – who was it?
I don't remember. Mike Barrett split one, and then R.J. Moten got the other one. I know
that's
that.
Right. R.J. Moten got one, and Mike Barrett split one. It might have even been with Chris Jenkins. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. But I thought they were effective. Obviously, Clifford escapes the pocket a lot. He's afraid to take the sacks, understandably so, but he was rattled all throughout the game, constantly running outside of the pocket from what I remember. And they just wreaked havoc on him. So we took the win, that's for sure.
And we saw something similar to what we've seen a lot this season, where they were getting amazing pass pressure, but they couldn't bring the quarterback down. And then as the game went on, they started to just continue to wear down that O-line. The quarterback took some hits. Everybody on the offensive side of the ball started to slow down a little bit. And then finally, that's when we saw those sacks come in at the end of the game. But I'm with you, man. I die a little on the inside. They get into the backfield. They get both hands on the quarterback. I know Sean Clifford's not a small dude, but you got to bring him down. Come on.
Especially Mozzie Smith. The guy is so close on so many big plays and sacks and things like that, and he's always just that close, and they break loose on him. So
I think we're just saving them all for the Buckeyes, man. I think just first quarter we're just gonna go after Stroud. So the linebackers, I'm looking at the linebackers, and we could just say the same thing about Junior Colson every week. He's amazing. R.J. Moten got the sack. The one thing I wanted to talk about is did you see the Junior Colson story on Fox Big Noon Kickoff? Did you see that by any chance before the game?
Oh, it was incredibly inspirational, like some Sandra Bullock blindside type stuff. Amazing, all jokes aside. I mean, it was a very heartwarming story. I cried a single tear watching it. It was beautiful what they did for him, and obviously just a great character in Junior Colson all around, a great human being, and couldn't be more deserving of the life he has now here in the States and everything that he's done so far at the University of Michigan.
Well, it just so happened that I was watching Game Day, and they did a story on Michi again, like an extended version of the Michi story already. So of course, like, I'm in tears. And if anybody doesn't know the Michi story, I mean, this guy was a top recruit, got diagnosed with bone cancer, had his leg amputated. Harbaugh and the team have embraced him. They've been giving him game balls. They let him come out to the big house and run a touchdown. And, just an amazing young man and a heart-wrenching story. And so I watched Game Day, and they did this story on Michi. And so, of course, I'm just crying. Like, you're not human if you can watch a Michi story and not just bawl. And then I switch it right over to Big Noon, and they're doing that Junior Colson story. And Junior was born in Haiti, which is one of the poorest countries in the world. Dad died when he was, I think it was like 6 or 9 years old. He was very young, and his dad passed away. And luckily, he had this amazing family, the Colsons, that I think they lived in Tennessee actually, and mom was a big Michigan fan and everything. So they adopted him, brought him over. Turns out he's a badass at football. And ends up going to Michigan, it's just really cool when you get these.
Buy the movie rights, Disney.
Yeah, right, exactly. Blindside 2. All right, let's move on to the secondary here. I didn't see them much for some reason. It felt like they must have been doing a good job because the ball didn't seem to get into the secondary very much, so it was hard for me to tell how each individual was playing. What's your assessment?
Well, I got to talk about first Will Johnson's hit on Sean Clifford. Oh, my goodness. Sit down, Clifford. Sit. It was amazing. I mean, Will Johnson, you've just been waiting for him to come up with a play, just feeling it, and have kind of like a Michigan moment. And he delivered that during Sean Clifford's run where he just hit him with the shoulder, didn't even move. Sean Clifford fell down like a little bitch, and Will Johnson gave him one of those looks like, yeah, we're going to win this football game. And it was amazing.
Is it just me, or does Michigan just destroy Sean Clifford every year? It's been like 9 years in a row. We've just killed that fucking guy. If I were him, I would just refuse to play Michigan again. I'm sure he has 5 more years of eligibility or something. That dude's never going to go away. But for as long as I can remember, we've been just destroying Sean Clifford. It feels like he's taking off on a stretcher every single game.
I know. And, it's really not even just us, poor Sean Clifford. Penn State, they've done a bad job over the last couple of years of protecting that guy. And this was supposed to be kind of the year that offensive line was improved around him. And for all intensive purposes, they were for the first 5 games of the season. But anyways, also in the secondary, I just want to get a little rant out. Those guys have got to stop dropping interceptions, for the love of God. We should have so many interceptions. DJ Turner, specifically, I'm calling you out. You're not watching the Big House Bleachers podcast, probably.
He might.
You might be, but I'm challenging you to catch an interception for the boys. Come on.
Man, so I had the same reaction because that was the second one that was like could have gone to the house, right? The one he had a couple weeks ago was just in his breadbasket. Should have taken it to the house, and then this one, it looked like he might have had one guy to beat, and probably could have taken it. My wife was like, "Calm down. It was a good play. Like he batted the ball down." I'm like, "No, like he should have caught the damn ball like that." You know, DJ's like an All-American caliber corner. And joking aside, we love DJ Turner. Like he's the fucking man. Like
one of the best athletes in the secondary. But that's exactly why we pick on him. You know what I mean? Because you expect your guys at your veteran guys at those positions, and you expect DJ Turner to come down with that play. So, challenge to you, DJ Turner. We know you got it in you, so let's do it.
Well, and you brought up the Will Johnson hit, which also had me super hyped. I'm glad you brought that up. But what got him in the game and got him a little more playing time at that point in the game was actually Jamon Green looked like he went down with like a little shoulder injury, and he already had like a shoulder brace on. I don't recall him getting hurt in a prior game. I could be wrong. I might have missed it, but he did come back in, so I'm not super worried about it, but it looked a little, I was a little sketched out seeing him come off the field. Do you know anything about his injury?
I'm not sure. I saw him go down, and then he was sitting down, as if something was going on with him, and then he got up, and then he sat, and then he got down again before exiting the field. So it almost looked to be like something very serious, and then to see he was in the game again later in the game, that was relieving. But I have no idea. Michigan, very secretive about their injuries always.
Yeah, he might have one of those little like rotator cuff stinger type things that they know they can put him back in the game, but it's just one that is rough every now and then. Let's move on to the kicking game.
On the secondary, though, they did allow DJ Turner a little bit of redemption for you. They did only allow 157 yards through the air. So, amazing game for them.
And really, before we move on from the defense entirely, the entire unit, including Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, deserve a ton of credit because I wouldn't say Penn State is one of the, most explosive, powerful offenses in the country. But let's be real. They're an undefeated Big Ten team, probably a top 10, top 15 caliber, talent across the board. And Michigan just shut them down. They didn't even score 17 points. They really scored 10 points, right? Because of that pick six. So, Michigan held that team to 10 points total. Speaking of, scoring, for better or for worse, Moody got a lot of action. Our other kicker, our punter, did not get a lot of action. What did you think about our kickers?
I honestly feel that Jake Moody had the best game of his year. Did you see that tackle that he got?
Oh, bro. I forgot about
that. I almost forgot to talk about it on this podcast until I was like finishing up, making the last couple little bit of notes. I was notating that he went 4 of 4, which already is awesome. But then he laid that sweet shoulder tackle, just really laid into that guy. And he's the one that kicked the damn ball. So it was just amazing to see that. Awesome. I mean, that just like tops probably any game that he'll play for the remainder of this year to me.
I think he might have saved the touchdown. I mean, that guy had a little bit of space. He was doing that thing that punt or kick returners do when they beat one or two guys and they're speeding up and they might take it. And Moody just came out of nowhere and just laid him out. I saw that. That was incredible.
Well, I mean, when the kicker has to be the one to tackle someone, you have to feel like they're probably they're going to be one of the only lines of defense. So, fuck yeah.
And I would say Brad Robbins probably had his best game ever as well. I didn't notice a single bad punt from him.
Yeah, nor a punt at all for Brad Robbins. I mean, excellent to see that. I will say that, like, I'm missing Caden Colasar a little bit, and his special teams nuisance finesse that he brings to that special teams defensive unit. You know, getting in people's faces, wreaking havoc. They haven't really had that when it comes to preventing special teams plays or anything like that. So missing you, Caden. But other than that, I mean, I thought a great all around game from special teams. So yesterday, just because of Jake Moody and his fucking awesome tackle.
Yeah, and you know, let's talk a little bit about game flow now. We didn't really touch on that yet. For me, it was an incredibly frustrating first half because of all of the field goals. You know, we've talked about this on the pod before where we don't know if it's the offensive play calling rhythm or, you know, if it's just execution, but for whatever reason, we show the ability to move the ball down the field with ease. And then for whatever reason, it just dies, you know, at somewhere. We either questionable play calling or we miss a pass or we take a sack or a penalty or a TFL, and the 16-14 at the end of the first half. If you would have told me that prior to the game, I probably would have been like, all right, you know, Michigan's playing pretty well. Like, we got a little lead, like top 10 matchup. Okay. But then you watch the first half and the way that it unfolded, I was actually concerned that we were going to lose the game. I thought we were leaving the door open. Penn State was going to stay close. They were going to figure some shit out in the second half, and we were going to, you know, look back at those field goals and wish they were touchdowns. How were you feeling at halftime?
You know, Mike, I honestly feel like this is one of the most fascinating Michigan teams we've ever seen, just because it's almost as if they like get their opponents into like this dogfight in the first half. And then by the time the second half comes, these guys got nothing left for them or something. I really don't know what's happening, but I mean, it's almost as if it's a part of their game plan at this point to like be narrowly either tied or narrowly winning over any opponent that they're facing at halftime. And then just fucking kill them at after halftime. It's just the flow of each game. And yesterday I wasn't really worried in the slightest because one, they picked up that pick six, but other than that, early on you could see that this Penn State offense was not going to be able to move the ball. They tried the run, two or three drives consecutively was shut down. Went to the passing game. That also wasn't working. Got an extremely lucky break on that long Clifford run. That was painful to watch every 20 seconds that was taking place. But other than that, I mean, I think Michigan just kind of plays its game flow can be best described as we play with our food for a half and then we win for an entire second half.
I love that metaphor. See, for me, I think it's just the trauma of like years past, you know, that creeps up on me where I'm like, we're going to lose to this team that we're just way fucking better than, you know, shades of Michigan State and Ohio State in years past. Every time we go down and get a field goal and not a touchdown, I'm like, oh my God, here we go again, right? Like we're going to outgain them and somehow they're going to figure something out. I should have remembered, like, this is Penn State. It's not Michigan State, right? Like, Michigan State, for whatever reason, like the flukiest stuff happens in those games. But yeah, I was a little nervous. And maybe that was just me spiraling at halftime or whatever. But then we came out in the second half and just showed we're a much, much better football team than Penn State. I don't think anybody came out of that game thinking like, oh, well, Penn State just had a bad day or anything like that. It's like, no, Michigan asserted their dominance in a top 10 matchup and really proved that they're one of the best 3 or 4 teams in the country. There's really no argument you can make now that says Michigan's not in that top 3 or 4 teams.
Absolutely. They crushed it. And I'm obviously going to have a fit if, obviously Tennessee took care of business against Bama, but it's yet another situation where an SEC team is beating another SEC team. So hopefully we just don't find ourselves in a situation where there's any drama this week where SEC bias and Michigan is being forced to, on the outside looking in after another good performance. Hopefully they get their due credit.
Well, you're gonna be mad at me when you see my power rankings. We'll talk a little bit about Tennessee later in the show when we unveil the pump the brakes segment. But let's look at our 5 bold predictions. Go ahead and kick off your 5 bold predictions for Penn State, and let's see how you did.
All right, so I led off my 5 bold predictions with Mike Morris would lead the Big Ten in sacks after this game, which obviously that did not happen. He was already a half sack behind Jacoby Windman of Michigan State. And he didn't have a sack at all yesterday. He had an awesome tackle for loss early in the game. Made an excellent play for as far as that's concerned, but no sacks for Morris. Second prediction, I did get correct. Penn State throws for under 200 yards. We did hold them to about 154 passing yards, if I'm not mistaken, total between Clifford and Aller. And JJ over 300 I had as my third prediction. JJ did not even come close to going over 300 yards for a second week in a row. But again, he was not called upon to do such a thing. Do I believe that he's capable of doing it if called upon? Absolutely. But that running game just went crazy, which leads into my fourth prediction. Donovan getting into the end zone. Double right. Donovan did get into the end zone and score a couple touchdowns. And fifth, I had Michigan stops a corny James Franklin special teams play, which I don't really think we had any crazy James Franklin wackadoo special plays or anything like that. But
I am so surprised he didn't fake a punt from his own 30 halfway through the second quarter or something. You know what I mean? He outsmarts himself so often. I'm surprised we didn't see that. So you didn't even really have an opportunity to stop anything like that.
Nothing at all. I was surprised.
When I write my bold predictions, I make sure that I don't look at yours first. So it's completely separate. Great. And I just happen to have 2 of the exact same predictions that you had this week. My first prediction was Sanders still rocks the turnover buffs. I figured he's so active on defense. He's the guy to rock the buffs this week. That didn't happen. We didn't get a turnover. Didn't need one. Didn't matter. That was fine. I said Michigan would hold Singleton under 75 yards rushing. Obliterated that one. The guy barely moved at all. I think he got basically all of his yards on the last 2 drives when he had 12 or 15. Yeah, he got nothing. I said Corum would have his Heisman moment, or not his. He's going to have more, but he would have a Heisman moment in this game. And that's not really a tangible one, because there's no yardage attached to it, but he left no question, right? That absolutely was a Heisman moment.
I'll give that to you. Absolutely.
Yeah, top 10 matchup, 2 touchdowns, 160-something yards. I mean, that is a Heisman moment. So I got that one. Donovan in the end zone, same thing as you, got that. And then I said JJ goes over 300, same as you, and didn't get it, but again, didn't need it. So we both did, pretty good. These are bold predictions, and I think we came out on top.
Oh, yeah. As everyone that listens knows, we go on average 2 of 5 every single week. At least myself. I get at least 2 out of 5 right.
Well, it's I don't know if you ever heard about setting goals. They say if you're reaching all your goals, then you're setting them too low. But if you're reaching only half of them, you're they're too hard or whatever. And I feel like that's what these bold predictions are, right? We're getting kind of that healthy number where they're bold enough to where we're not getting all of them. But we're leaving some room to get a couple of them.
Would like to see Mike Sainristil still rocking them turnover buffs though.
Oh, we're gonna see that. Yeah, he would look cold in the buffs. We're definitely gonna see that. Let's move on to the Big Ten in general. So Illinois actually looks like they might be one of the tougher matchups we've got left on the schedule. Probably the toughest matchup prior to Ohio State. They're a one-loss team. They're a top 25 team. Have you gotten your eyes on Illinois at all this season?
I have. It's looking like Illinois might be a team that we played twice this year, if I'm not mistaken. Dare I say it?
It could end up being a Big Ten championship preview based on the way things are shaping up. So, I haven't watched them play much, but I've been following the box scores. I've been seeing what they've been doing. And, they did lose to Indiana, which is not a great team, but it was a 3-point loss. And, they slipped up. And other than that, they've looked really good. So Illinois, stays a one-loss team. Purdue beat Nebraska, which, should be surprising. But at this point, like Nebraska losing is no surprise. And then Maryland beat Indiana. So not a lot of action in the Big Ten. And anything else you want to add to the Big Ten?
I don't think so. And I will say that I'm not threatened by Illinois. There was actually a fan that responded to something that I had said on Twitter or something. And they said, as an Illinois fan, this has been fun, but I think Michigan will whoop our ass. So for what that's worth, what that tells you, I mean, Illinois, they've had some good little fluky wins, but as they get further into their schedule, I'm sure that they'll lose before they play Michigan. You know what I mean? And it'll become much less of a hyped matchup. Hopefully they hang on to that ranking until Michigan can put the beat down on them. Other than that, and the Michigan State win over Wisconsin, nothing really jumped out at me this weekend in the Big Ten.
On the national stage, however, absolute madness took place, and I am here for it. Last week I made that tide is turning kind of joke about Alabama was showing some weakness, and then sure enough, Tennessee – in a no defense kind of shootout game in the SEC, beat Alabama with the ugliest looking game winning field goal I've seen in my life, and it made me so fucking happy. Did you watch that game?
I did watch that game, and it's just great to see. I don't think Alabama is the threat that we're used to seeing them in recent years, but I mean, it was just your comment about that being the ugliest looking field goal was exactly on point. But kudos to Tennessee for taking down Nick Saban and the Tide and busting this thing wide open, man. I mean, this is college football this year.
And then I don't know if you saw late last night. I know you're on the East Coast, and so it was really late last night, but USC actually went down to Utah as well. So now we're looking at, I think there's 9 undefeated teams left, maybe 8 undefeated teams left in the country. We're starting to whittle them down. Utah actually went for 2 with less than a minute left. They had nothing to lose anyway, right? They came into the season with a lot of high expectations. They've already got 2 losses. They said, fuck it, we're gonna go for 2. They got it. Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, the USC Trojans drop a game. And for a Pac-12 team to lose, I think that pretty much solidifies that they won't make the college football playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the Pac-12, I joke at their expense all the time, but they're just not a conference that can compete with the rest of the Power Five. And I mean, until they can prove otherwise, then I won't take them seriously. I mean, they they're another one of those division or conferences that just kind of cannibalizes each other. Guaranteed that every one of their teams is going to take on some losses throughout the season, and there's just no real threat that they pose to any of the Big Ten or SEC or anything like that.
Yeah, and so TCU beat Oklahoma State, so there's another unbeaten that goes down. And if I was going to pick one of those two to lose, I think Oklahoma State losing is better because TCU is more likely to drop a game later in the season. Specifically, I think they'll lose to Texas. Ole Miss did not look great, but stayed unbeaten against Auburn. And then Syracuse is building quite the resume. Syracuse is still unbeaten. Of the lower-ranked unbeaten teams, does anybody stick out to you as a potential college football playoff dark horse?
I kind of like TCU. I think that they've done well. Ole Miss, I'm sure that it's only a matter of time. They have yet to really play anybody of actual significance on their resumes. So they still have yet for us to figure out what they're actually made of. Syracuse, they're in a division that could be up for grabs. We'll see what happens. They've been known to give Clemson problems, so we'll see how that pans out. I don't think Clemson is really all that this year. I think that they have yet to be truly tested. I mean, some of those teams have wins against like NC State and stuff like that on their resume, but I don't really trust NC State, understandably so, after last weekend. But other than that, I don't really see too many actual threats. I think Bama, they still probably belong in like the top 5 or 6. So it's difficult for me to say whether or not TCU is a top 5 team. But
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. I think TCU, I think their resume is looking pretty strong. So I'll have a few words for them shortly. And then, my other thing that I noted is that Notre Dame lost their 3rd game, and they're in shambles, and, their fans are just like punching up right now, trying to be relevant, trying to start fights with fan bases like Michigan. And honestly, I don't even have time to talk to a Notre Dame fan right now. They're so irrelevant and so bad. And I just don't feel bad about it at all, right? I just don't.
Absolutely not. I've got a buddy of mine that's a big Notre Dame fan, and me and him will go at it all season long since Michigan and Notre Dame never really played too recently in the last few years, and for the next several, but we'll go back and forth, and he's just been dead radio silent this entire. I'm wondering for his safety, and maybe going to file a police report, but those Notre Dame fans are just dropping off of the map at this rate.
And now it's time for this segment we're going to give a try called Pump the Brakes. Let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to hit you with a somewhat either controversial or against the grain take, and you have the opportunity to tell me if you agree or if I need to pump the brakes. But I already know that I'm right about all these, so you probably won't tell me to pump the brakes at all because, in my opinion, these are all genius takes that are obviously correct. But I'm going to go ahead and start with one that we're going to find out next week. The Syracuse Orangemen will beat Clemson next week. And originally I wrote that Syracuse would win the ACC, but I looked at their schedule and I backed away from that a little bit. But, Syracuse just beat NC State, who I was not really that high on, but a lot of people were high on NC State. They're undefeated. Clemson's showing a little bit of weakness here and there. They haven't looked great. They beat a good Florida State team by 6. I am going to say that given the trend of college football, Bama going down this week, that Syracuse will beat the Clemson Tigers.
I'm not even going to disagree with that take. That's a brilliant take.
Man,
keep driving.
Let's keep driving. What you got, Matt?
So, I have Mel Tucker or Marcus Freeman on the hot seat this year.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you to pump the brakes, because there is no way in hell that the Michigan State Spartans are going to give up on their saint, the Messiah, the Savior, Mel Tucker. They will go down. They will go down burning with Mel Tucker. Now, Marcus Freeman, I don't know. I think they'll give him more than just 1 year. But with the state of college football, who knows? If they see a sexier option, they might go after him. But we're gonna pump the brakes on the Mel Tucker thing, and I hope that he's there for the entirety of his contract, so we can see him just spiral with the Spartans. Next up, for me, I'm going to go ahead and say that Illinois is the third best team in the Big Ten. I think we all know Ohio State and Michigan. Whatever order you have those two in, they're number one and number two. The Illini are the third best team in the Big Ten.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you to pump the brakes on that one, Mike.
Wow. Why so?
And I'm just going to say they're in a weak West. I know that they've impressed with some wins over Iowa. I think that they're up there, probably maybe the fourth best team. I still believe that Penn State is probably on a little bit different of a level than Illinois. I mean, it's still Illinois. They've pulled out some good wins. I know they handled Minnesota. They handled who else they got here? They got Minnesota. They got a 9-6 juggernaut win against Iowa. Yeah, I mean, I think they've done some things. They beat Virginia, beat Wisconsin, so they've done some things. But I'm going to say pump the brakes, fourth best.
All right, what you got?
So I'm going to say Alabama is not a playoff team this
year. Yeah, there's nothing to say there. I agree with you. Bama's not going to make the playoffs. Let's keep driving.
Freezing cold take.
All right. You're going to love this one. I crafted this one just for you, my friend. Tennessee is the number one team in the country. Now, let me explain. I am not saying that Tennessee is the best team in the country. I believe that a scheme like Michigan could probably beat them. I believe a team like Ohio State could probably outscore them. But given their resume, they've won 4 out of their last 5 games, or 4 out of their last 5 wins have been against AP top 25 teams. By resume, the Tennessee Volunteers have earned the right for at least 1 week to be the number one team in the country.
I'm going to go ahead and way pump the brakes on Tennessee, my friend. I mean, I think Tennessee on a big stage performed. They handled their business against Alabama, have cast Alabama and Nick Saban off to the realms of irrelevancy for this year. But of those ranked matchups, what are they? A win over the Florida Gators, over LSU, over Alabama, and Pitt, Ball State, and Akron is their resume this year. So while those are SEC teams, they remain only ranked wins for the purpose of SEC bias, in my opinion. I think Tennessee, number 4.
I knew you were going to do your research on this one, so I'm glad you came strapped with the facts. But let me ask you this. Give me a team that has a better resume thus far in the season.
Honestly, for the purpose of ranking the season, the way that it's structured, I do believe that Tennessee deserves their credit. They've handled everything that's been thrown at them. So to your credit, sir, as the rules have it, Tennessee deserves their spot. I still think by the eye test and by logic is concerned and where some of those matchups currently stand. I mean, you saw it. I don't know if you watched the LSU versus Florida matchup, but I mean, those are two teams that have played some ugly games this year. So I'm not buying too much stock into it. I think that win against Alabama is impressive, and they belong in the playoff discussion, absolutely, so long as they don't blow it the rest of the year. But
they're gonna blow it. They're gonna find a way to blow it. I'm not a Tennessee bandwagon guy. I mean, I hate Tennessee. I'm just
by
speaking,
resume.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to be number one.
Absolutely. I mean, trust me, but I'm not discredited in that. They are going to need an SEC team in that number one spot. They can't have it as a Big Ten team.
Right. And if you put Georgia on the side of their helmet and then play through their schedule, you know that they would be ranked number one, right? And so a lot of it has to do with just the brands that we're used to seeing. All right, let's keep on driving. What you got?
I got Blake Corum for Heisman, and really, I mean, that's also more of a freezing cold take at this point. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, who have we really got competing against him? I know it's a quarterback award, and quarterbacks are going to be more heavily looked at upon it, but Blake Corum is just as consistent as it gets. Just an all-American college football player. Just he's guaranteed to light up the scoreboard every single week. I love him.
Well, and I'm not going to tell you to pump the brakes on this one. So I keep driving, honk the horn a couple times, flick off a Buckeye out the window, keep on driving, right? Like Blake Corum will win the Heisman. Let's go. So my last one for you is this is kind of similar to the to the Tennessee discussion. I've got TCU as a top 5 team right now, and I think a lot of people would argue with that. They've taken the top half of the Big 12 and pretty much demolished them. They took what I thought was the best team in the Big 12, the Oklahoma State Cowboys, to overtime and then beat them in overtime this last weekend. I think you have a clear 4 best teams in the country right now. And in whatever order, Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, and Tennessee are your top 4. And then I say TCU is number 5. The TCU Horned Frogs, number 5 team in the country.
And I am honestly, I'm probably going to do a half-ass pump. Really, we're probably going to hydroplane on this one because I'm really very on the fence about it. I mean, TCU, they're very deserving of that spot. I think it'd be an interesting matchup, them versus Alabama. Now, obviously, Alabama just lost in epic fashion to Tennessee, and I don't feel that they're a playoff team, but I still think that that talent level of them with TCU is very close based off of what we've seen from TCU so far. So by resume, by undefeatedness, we're just going to hydroplane, and I'm not going to pump the brakes, and we're probably going to get into an accident, but I'm going to let that one stand.
And you just coined a Big House Bleachers original trademarked word, undefeatedness. That's that. There you go, a new word for you. All right, and then you got one more for me,
for
right?
Undefeated teams.
And what else you got?
I just got the same brand of Michigan football that we've watched through this first 7 weeks is good enough to beat the Buckeyes in Columbus this year.
It would be blasphemy for me to pump the brakes on that statement. I'm willing to admit that I'm very nervous about going into Columbus and taking on that high-powered Buckeye team, especially after what happened last year. So I'm not going to just blatantly say that I'm 100% sure that this will happen, but I'm hopeful. It looks like we've got the recipe. It looks like the offensive line controlling the line of scrimmage, the run game. Yeah, we don't have to pump the brakes on that. Let's keep on driving into the bye week, and then next week we've got the Michigan State Spartans. Both of us will be in attendance. Don't forget, if you like the podcast, to click subscribe on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Matt, as always, it's a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for doing this with me. Any parting words of wisdom?
No parting words of wisdom, but I will leave all of you with some statistics by the numbers of what we have here, in case any of you were wondering after this week against Penn State. While Michigan doesn't remain in the top 10 in total offense, we dropped to 22nd, but stay in the top 10 in rush offense at 9th. And at defense, we remain at number 4th in total defense in the country. Passing yards allowed, 9th. Rushing yards allowed, 6th. Pass efficiency, 4th. Scoring defense, 5th. So an excellent defensive effort through the first 7 weeks. Blake Corum absolutely lighting it up. Rushing touchdowns, he leads the nation with 13. Rushing yards, second with 901. Rushing yards per game, 6th with 128. And rushing yards per carry, 28th with 6.17.
I mean, yeah, we're racking up the stats. And from an offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency standpoint, I saw coming into this week, Bama and Michigan were the only two that were in the top 10 of both categories. And given what happened with Bama last week, Michigan might be the last one standing in that truly balanced offensive and defensive approach. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Blake Corum is racking up stats left and right. So we've got a lot of reason to be optimistic. We're 7-0 heading into the bye week. Spartans after that. Mr. Hartwell, you have a good week, sir. That was episode 3 of the Big House Bleachers podcast. As always, go blue.
Go blue.